All right, now, everybody. Quiet, listen to me. We're going to start a show. Now, some of you people have been with me before. You know it's going to be a tough grind, but we're going to have a show.
Thank you all. Oh my gosh, it's overwhelming. It really is. When it plays, folks, we have a thank you. I don't know what to say. It's as though someone keeps pressing an applause button. I mean, it's amazing here. Please, I'm going to ask everybody to be seated. I'm flattered. I'm overwhelmed. I'm warmed by that recorded reception. And let me say that today will be unlike any other. Yes, that's right. It's the start of March Madness, everyone. It begins today. Hopefully you've gotten through the brackets, and hopefully you've made it through the hornet's nest of pop-up ads that all exist on that platform. It is pretty daunting, but I will tell you that I'm excited for the future. And the next 2 weeks of riveting audio drop on audio drop action, my friends. It's going to be great. It's going to be great. And unlike other years, Kim McAllister, who's barely wanting to participate in anything we do, she is a part of things this year. Yes. Yeah.
Kim, how are you?
All right. I'm excited. Albert has a, I don't know if Albert has a bracket or not. I have a bracket. Albert, one moment, please, if you would. Now, tell me, do you have a bracket, Albert? I think you do typically, don't you?
I try to stay to not influence the vote. But
Oh, of course.
I did fill out a bracket, though, this year.
All right. I love it. I love it.
I will not be sharing my opinions, though, because I am the commissioner, and to keep things fair, I won't influence the vote.
The commissioner of March Madness is Albert. He is here in the commissioner's chair, and we will, again, just review what's going to happen, and it'll just take a second. We will put up 2 audio drops against each other each hour. So every day on the show, there will be 2 audio drops. They go up against each other. You'll hear them. You'll vote as to the one that should continue to the next round. You can vote based on which one you like better. You can vote based on which one you think others are going to like better. You can vote on any basis with any criteria you describe to yourself and you decide upon. So the trick in March Madness is to somehow anticipate how people are going to vote. But where the voting takes place, let me just explain. If you're listening, you'll need to go to our YouTube channel. And if you're watching on YouTube, you'll simply go to the posts part of our YouTube channel. Albert has it there now. You see it, posts. So under posts, you will see both sound drops that you've heard on the show. Today, it'll be shame versus Trump concepts. You'll hear them in a second. And you will vote there. That's the first hour. And then the second hour, there'll be 2 others. So that's where the voting goes down. But the listening to the drops, that will go down on the show itself. All right. So this is pretty exciting. If everybody's ready, I'm ready to get it on. Albert, I ask you as commissioner, do you have any kind of prayer? Is like a benediction or something? Is like a holy water or something? Anything, or we just go?
I think we should just go. I think I don't even know what's going on in this country. So I think as long as we just continue things, it'll feel normal.
Yeah, believe me, we are all bummed out and sadly more confused and disappointed every day. But the one thing we can count on is here. Ladies and gentlemen, March Madness.
Do you know who I am?
No.
I'm kind of a big deal.
It's true. But I felt Albert was going to kick it off. But I think you should say something like, this is March Madness, or let's get started, or what?
I'm sure one of these are trademarked, one of these phrases, any of these phrases I could say.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Like, let's get ready to rumble or something.
No, don't say that. Oh, my God. Yeah. I guess you should say smash it with your iron rod.
Yeah. Smash it. Welcome to March Madness.
Yeah, all right.
Now, March Madness.
All right, here it is. The showdown now. You'll vote in the posts section of our YouTube channel, either for
shame,
or...
So just a yes or no, you still do not have a plan? I have concepts of a plan.
Okay, so you'll vote for either shame, shame, or the Trump drop.
So just a yes or no, you still do not have a plan?
I have concepts of a plan.
All right, so the posts is where you'll find them both, and you will vote there. Good luck, and may the better drop win. Yeah. Mark's Madness on the now in this new platform.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Now let's get to a remarkable development. How a chief executive can go after a judge who has made a judgment from the bench that's perfectly legal. I mean, the judge is empowered to make legal judgments, and yet this judge is being vilified not only by this president, but by the right-wing media ecosphere. So you create a kind of call for impeachment, and you heard John Roberts, or saw the remarks of John Roberts. We reported them yesterday, talking about the fact that this is completely inappropriate. John Roberts, who gave Donald Trump in his concierge Supreme Court presidential immunity, talking about the fact that this idea that you would call for the impeachment of a legally appointed judge, how it's not to be tolerated. And so that judge essentially, he underscored the not to be tolerated part when he spoke of his order being ignored during that Venezuelan deportation of all those gang members. Again, they were claimed to be gang members. We don't know. Maybe they are. And maybe it's a good thing that they were deported. But what I suggest, and I suggested yesterday, is that there's a very simple and rapid process through the immigration courts. It's not like a normal court, so it's not encumbered by many of the slowdowns that a normal court would be encumbered by. Anyway, we get to last night, Donald Trump trashed the judge again in a sit-down with Laura Ingraham. And today, Trump's press secretary attacked the same federal judge, called him a Democratic activist. This just happened.
She said Democrat activist. You know, they use that rat. They say,
oh, right.
Democrat
activist.
Yeah.
You're right. Thank you. Yeah, that's their thing. Caroline Leavitt, she singled out this judge, this James Boasberg. He, again, tried to prevent these planes from taking off. He now wants to see an actual timeline, because what they're saying is, we didn't get the word until it was too late. Now we know one of those planes hadn't taken off yet, and there's all manner of evidence that this cake wasn't completely baked when this court order came in to turn them all around. So Leavitt says the judge in this case is essentially trying to say that the president doesn't have the executive authority to deport foreign terrorists from our American soil. That is an egregious abuse of the bench. This judge cannot and does not have that authority. And it's very, very clear. She put in two verys, which always signals something important coming. It's very, very clear that this is an activist judge who is trying to usurp the president's authority under the Alien Enemies Act. The president has this power, and that's why this deportation campaign has continued. And this judge, Judge Boasberg, is a Democrat activist. Now, Boasberg was appointed by anybody? George Bush. Yes, the noted Democrat activist lover, George Bush. So Obama made him chief judge of the District of Columbia's federal court, but that's the history of Boasberg. But now, of course, he's going to be run out of town, and I say that kind of in a, I don't mean that literally, and I don't know that he'll actually be leaving his job, but I mean, there's that, they've got the pitchforks out for him now. This is Trump last night with Laura Ingraham on Fox News Channel, in between the back rub he was getting from Laura Ingraham. Here is the comment he had about this judge. Go ahead, Albert.
The courts stepping in to make a statement here. They didn't make a statement when Joe Biden, decided to forgive all those student loans.
Well, he didn't mention my name in the statement. I just saw it quickly. He didn't mention my name,
Yeah.
but many people have called for his impeachment, the impeachment of this judge. I don't know who the judge is, but he's radical left. He was Obama appointed. And he actually said we shouldn't be able to take criminals, killers, murderers, horrible, the worst people, gang members, gang leaders, that we shouldn't be allowed to take them out of our country. Well, that's a presidential job. That's not for a local judge to be making that determination. And I thought it was terrible. In fact, he said when they were well on their way, there was an order issued, as I understand it, to bring them back or to not let them go or something. And this is not something that the country would stand for. These people, they were let in here by an incompetent president who had open borders, and anybody throughout the world could come in. And we were given murderers. We were given people from mental institutions and prisons.
The
and
judge
drug
is
lords.
essentially saying, excuse me, Mr. President, that there still is a process in place. You can read between the lines. It hasn't been a full ruling yet. And I know the Justice Department is appealing this on a couple of different grounds, but this is leading people to wonder whether there are court orders that you will defy because you believe that the judge has no jurisdiction or they're political questions and not justiciable at all. And what would you say to that? Are there circumstances where you would defy a court order?
Well, I think that, number one, nobody's been through more courts than I have. I think nobody knows the courts any better than I have. I would say the chief judge does, but nobody knows them better than I have. And what they've done to me, I've had the worst judges. I've had crooked judges. I have judges that valued Mar-a-Lago at $18 million because that benefited his case, because he wanted to see me convicted of something. I have judges that had relatives making millions and millions of dollars on the election, ruling on the election.
But going forward,
I had judges
would
that
you
were
defy
so
a court
corrupt.
order? Because we all know that, and that was
I
outrageous.
never did defy a court order.
And you wouldn't in the future.
No, you can't do that. However, we have bad judges. We have very bad judges, and these are judges that shouldn't be allowed. I think at a certain point you have to start looking at what do you do when you have a rogue judge. The judge that we're talking about, you look at his other rulings. I mean, rulings unrelated, but having to do with me, he's a lunatic.
He wants details of when flights departed and trying to, I guess
This
they
is what I
seem
was
to be
talking
trying
about.
to lay
Yeah,
the
he wants
predicate
those
for
details.
your administration having defied a court order. Now, you all have said you haven't given specific times, and you filed a motion in court, your Justice Department, to prevent any more information getting out about specific times of flights. So that seems to be where this is going. Do you have faith that the Supreme Court ultimately will rule in your favor in this case?
Because the job of getting people out of our country that are murderers, that are absolutely the worst people, the drug lords are causing such problems in this country. Drug lords came in, the biggest of them. They left other countries to come in here. They came through an open border. They're making millions of dollars destroying people's lives, killing people. And that's a presidential thing. We're supposed to be getting them out or getting them brought to justice. We had a judge, I would call him a rogue judge. You can call him whatever you want. I know nothing about him. I heard about this very late in the process, and I said, that's a strange order. You have local judges, local federal judges, period, and DAs and prosecutors, DAs, state attorney generals that want to really take over. I think some of it's for the publicity. They love the publicity. All of a sudden, they're on the front page of every newspaper, but they have no right to be.
I don't actually think that they want the publicity. I think it's interesting, though, that a publicity hound like Trump is, and there's nothing wrong with being a publicity hound, but I mean, it's kind of like the coin of the realm now. They're Instagram influencers, et cetera. They all want the publicity. But judges typically aren't looking for the victory lap. And this judge, I think, it would seem, looking at the history, even just in a cursory way, doesn't seem to be one who's all about the publicity. The other thing I would say, I mean, that's just his last point. It's not really that critical, but it's just, one more piece of smear that he throws in at the end. But he's already defied the court order, right? He's already defied it. They deported these Venezuelans. there was a court order. There was a restraining order to turn those flights around. And those that hadn't taken off yet should be offloaded. And that was defied. So the idea to say, would you defy a court order? He's already done it. And now you're finding the scramble, right? Because the court finds itself in an awkward position to some way hold this president to account and hold this administration to account. And as I mentioned, I think it was yesterday, you know, the contempt order can come down from the bench, but what do you do? I mean, do you hold a, you know, who within the administration who is involved in this process do you hold in contempt of court? So you can see this is, and then the other thing I would just say, because it's a federal judgment, you know, Trump can pardon anyone held in contempt, can pardon, his pardon powers are so extraordinary, and it can be perhaps an exhaustive process to try to pardon everybody involved. But Trump himself, because of his immunity, could just say, hey, I ordered it and I'm okay with it. Again, yeah, impeach this treasonous judge. They're saying impeach this treasonous traitor to Trump. He would say impeach this treasonous judge. And Trump, I suppose it's something of a newsworthy item that he says he wouldn't defy the courts, but as I say, he already has on one level. And now you see the courts ruling on what's happened in Washington on the discharge of USAID, the unraveling of USAID and other agencies. You're seeing the courts now weigh in on that. And there has been a judge that now says you have to rehire all those employees that were discharged. It's even, this court order, challenging the legitimacy of DOJ in regard to all of these things. But as I told you yesterday, it's a little like Kim preparing this perfect sauce for our big dinner for listeners and viewers. And drunk Mark Thompson comes in and just puts all these cayenne peppers in it, like just tons of cayenne peppers, and just destroys, because he's drunk, all of the sauce. And Kim tastes and go, my God, this is horrible. We can't do this. And so she gets a judge's order, and the judge's order is to remove all the cayenne peppers from the sauce. Well, you can't remove all the cayenne peppers from the sauce. It's done. The sauce is made. And that's what's happening in Washington. USAID, that sauce has already been made. Those employees have been discharged. Many of them are seeking employment on the outside. Many of them don't have the means or the time to wait for a court case to go through and for them to be reimbursed for back pay. Maybe it'll happen, maybe it won't. And the Trump administration, dogged as they are in their determination to decapitate these agencies, they're going to drag out this process. They want those federal employees to go away, be absorbed somewhere into the private sector. We are ending all of those people who used to work there. And that is the plan. So this sauce, regardless of what the judge says, is horribly ruined. And now it'll be just too hard to put it all back, to put Humpty Dumpty back together again. And so that's, I think, where we are. And so when I look at Washington and try to assess the damage done thus far, I see that as a real impediment to getting back on track in any way for many of these agencies. So when they say you need to spend this money that was in the pipeline already, the money has already been cut off. The programs, many of them have died on the vine. And much of the food and the foodstuffs that were going to be sent to these various places all around the world through USAID, that stuff has literally died. It's spoiled. So I see what's happening in Washington now as a chaotic mess. I guess you can say, well, that's the idea, that's the design. And I agree, it is the design, but it leaves us in a really tortured place when it comes to trying to, in any way, salvage programs or pieces of programs that could make a difference. So that's the latest on that. If I skipped anything, Kim, you'll let me know. But I think that's more or less a summary of where we are.
It's where we are.
Yeah. There is news from the Oval that is not involving a judge.
The Mark Thompson Show.
There is a copy of the Declaration of Independence in the Oval Office, everyone. And
That's rich.
yeah, it really is. Well, could you find a more independent? He's not declaring independence enough. Apparently, there has been the Declaration of Independence delivered to the White House at the president's request. It is displayed in the Oval Office, where it will carefully. By the way, there's still people working at the National Archives. I'm surprised. I thought he cleaned everybody out.
Not very much. There's one guy left, and he's the one that prepped the declaration.
Right. Yes, sir, Mr. President. Whatever you want.
Yeah.
So the National Archives did deliver the Declaration of Independence to the Oval, where it will be carefully and protected and preserved, said Press Secretary Carolyn Leavitt. And the original Declaration of Independence is very faded and displayed in the Archives building. And the version in the White House, the words are clear and legible, so it's not the original document. But nonetheless, maybe that's symbolic in some way. That's the situation there. The JFK docs. Did anybody get into
The Mark Thompson Show.
the JFK docs? Surprise, surprise, no surprises. I mean, apparently, first of all, there were redactions, and many of these files related to the assassination had already been disclosed. 13,000 documents released during the Biden administration regarding this were re-released. This is like when, Beyonce re-releases an album and it's supposed to be remastered or something, and you go, it sounds a lot like the last Beyonce album. I don't know this, but apparently the documents were posted to the National Archives website. It was last night, and researchers who really know the JFK assassination can, sift through it. But apparently, there are 2,000 newly posted documents, supposedly, and apparently there's no indication that there's any bombshells, and it looks as though this might just be a meh, Again, it's to have been expected, and the current conclusion that Kennedy's assassination involved a lone gunman, Lee Harvey Oswald, that is the prevailing opinion, impression that you would get having reviewed these documents, according to many who are familiar with this stuff, and that is to say, familiar with the JFK assassination investigation, and who have looked at these documents. So that's where we are. We'd heard we were going to see the Jeffrey Epstein records. We'd heard we were going to see the UFO records. We have yet to see that. But to give Biden a little credit too. They did release a bunch of this under Biden's watch. But in any case, if you were looking for a huge bombshell, I guess there are none in the JFK documents.
So far, they say it's the same set of documents that President Biden released, that Biden's were more redacted, but that it really offers no new information.
Yeah. But it's the way they announced it that was so cool. That's really what you're there for.
I thought there was going to be a big bombshell,
Yeah, well, that's the way they announced it. But
right.
Years ago, there was a live television event during which Geraldo Rivera leads up to this importance around Al Capone's vault, the treasure trove of information that could be in Al Capone's vault. And they did a whole primetime special on it. It was really well watched. And he was going to open Al Capone. Wasn't it Al Capone? I think it was Al Capone's vault.
Yeah, John Slade says Al Capone's vaults.
Yeah, there you go. And so he's going to release it, open it up and reveal it right on live TV. And it was really great the way they built up to it or whatever. And so, you're really on the edge of your seat, like, what's going to be in there? Oh my God, this is great. So, and of course, they open it up and there's literally nothing in the vault. Okay? And it was on live TV, again, it was a primetime special. That was the big denouement. That was the big, the crescendo, the climax. And it was meh. not even meh. It was like nothing was there.
Nothing burger.
And so
It's
this
a
is
sad
kind of
trombone. Wah,
yeah,
wah,
exactly.
wah,
Thank you. So that's the situation. We'll talk Trump and Ukraine a little bit later. I also wanted to mention that I've got the doctor coming in today. He comes in every other week, and there's a lot going on. In fact, I don't know if you saw it, but they're well, we'll fill you in on the Dr. Oz hearing because some stuff went down with that. A measles update, and I saw something today that is wildly concerning. I want to ask the doc about bird flu because JFK Jr. is saying that the bird flu should now be allowed to actually spread in all of these different farms on which these birds live and are contracting this bird flu. So, yeah, denouement is a ding word. You're absolutely right about that. Sorry. The flawed thinking in, don't forget to smash the like button as I'm talking. Thank you very much. Smash it like a boss.
Smash
Come on,
it
do it.
with your iron rod.
Do it. It's free. Do it. Apparently, it's important in the world of YouTube. It helps us. Let me get back. I'll just want to mention this is super important. So you'll be glad, I think, that you heard it if you weren't aware of it already. The bird flu is spreading on farms, poultry farms across America, okay, and the world for that matter. But we really have a situation here where it is spreading at a pretty scary rate. So RFK Jr. is saying, let it spread because in its spreading, there will be a part of the population of birds that won't get it. And in the population of birds that won't get it, there could be clues as to how to build immunity for this outbreak of this virus. Now, first of all, this is crazy, okay? Because the more it spreads, the more you end up with a transmissible illness that is potentially skipping to the human population. Right now, it's those who work around these creatures that have been most susceptible and have actually contracted it in a couple of instances, several instances. But the reason it's crazy is really associated with the fact that it presumes a greater genetic variety than you'll find in livestock populations. And the only reason I am at all familiar with this is through my animal, rights stuff, or just looking through the many animal cruelty things that I'm familiar with how these animals are raised. They're raised in insanely close quarters, where, as you know, they're right on top of each other. Oftentimes, they just don't have even room to spread their wings. It's horrifying. It's awful. And the reason that's important is that that's not the normal way they'd be in nature, right? They would never be collected together institutionally like this in these warehouses of horror, in their own fecal matter, and all the rest. But the actual population is pretty uniform genetically. There isn't the normal natural variety and variance genetically that you would find in nature. And for that reason, if you're looking for the part of the population that is showing an immunity to a virus, you're not going to find a specific genetic makeup that is different than the others in that warehouse of horror that houses these creatures. So, in the way in which we raise livestock, poultry, livestock, animals to eat, we essentially replicate the same genetic stamp on all of these creatures. The essential genetics are the same. So if you're waiting to find this special crew with a different genetic makeup, you're going to be waiting a long time. The mainstream poultry producers will tell you that the genetics of it all just don't favor that plan. So even as he deals with this building epidemic that could turn pandemic, there's some flaws, even in his strategies moving forward. We'll talk to the doctor about that in hour 2. He's got a lot of stuff he wants. This doctor, doesn't he, Kim? Dr. Daignault really comes after it.
Yeah, he does. He, usually we put the topics together to present to people. He comes with he sends me messages like, no, here's some things that we can talk about. I'm like, okay, here's some things I think we can talk about. Let's talk about it all. So he's great.
I don't want to get to Rothmann quite yet because I want to do it, Albert. You have kept me from doing it. The conspiracy on this show that keeps me away from my favorite segment, it's don't think I don't notice it. I want to do some law and disorder.
Oh.
Yeah. Albert, can you connect it for me?
I'm ready.
All right, my friends. I want it. You want it. The world wants it. I'm going to give it to you. This is Law and Disorder.
In the criminal justice system, the people,
pimps, addicts, thieves, bums, winos, girls who can't keep an address, and men who don't care,
are represented by 2 separate yet equally important groups.
A cop, a flatfoot, a bull, a dick, John Law. You're the fuzz, the heat, you're poison, you're trouble, you're bad news.
These are their stories.
The mega pastor, the wonderful mega pastor, strong Republican mega pastor, very close to Donald Trump. He was someone who was feted in many ways. He was the very image of the God-fearing Christian that represented so much of the population that wants to get this country back to the kind of lifestyle that we need to get back to. Well, it turns out that this Texas megachurch pastor, he was accused of sex abuse. Yeah, I'm just going to say it. Child sexual abuse, and he has surrendered to Oklahoma authorities on Monday of this week.
What?
Actually, that's right.
And this was Trump's spiritual advisor? Is that who he was?
He was a key figure in the Trump orbit, Kim.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, his relationship with Trump, it's pretty interesting only because he was so relevant for so long. I actually put aside some information on him. Let me see if I can find it. He was quite the figure when it came to trying to purge this society of the decadence and the horror that we have so reflected under the Democrats. But now he has been accused himself of child sex abuse. He surrendered to Oklahoma authorities. And I wouldn't say that he was the spiritual advisor to the president, but I would say he's among the highest profile spiritual advisors to the president. Spiritual advisors, you call them whatever you want. The victim told authorities that the abuse started when she was 12 years old, and he was a traveling evangelist at that time. And he was staying with her family. The abuse continued for 4 years, apparently. His name is Morris, Robert Preston Morris. He's 63, and as I say, he's turned himself in. She says, after almost 43 years, the law has finally caught up with Robert Morris for the horrific crimes he committed against me as a child. Now it's time for the legal system to hold him accountable. So, indeed, we hope they do. In San Jose, California, a man vandalizes a Tesla in a San Jose parking lot. The police chief and mayor have responded to that situation. It happened at the Costco, where usually only good things happen at Costco. But it happened. San Jose cops said they have arrested the man for felony vandalism. It's not cool owning a Tesla anymore. People are breaking back on Tesla because of the Muskie and Doge thing. And Teslas were found vandalized with swastikas and profanity in San Diego County. the same issue. Plus, as you know, there was a fire, this in Nevada. Federal law enforcement looking at 3 Molotov cocktail incidents at Tesla showrooms across the U.S. Las Vegas, the latest. It was a blaze set at the Tesla showroom, and they are viewing it as potential terrorism. Meantime, a Texas midwife was arrested. Remarkable thing, Maria Margarita Rojas charged with illegal performance of abortion. It's considered a second-degree felony in the state of Texas.
Is this what we're back to? In the time of my mother's era, where they did what did they call them? Coat hanger.
Yeah,
exactly. Backroom alley, kind of, you don't know if you're going to live or not if you go to one of these places. So now here they are in Texas, rolling back to my mother's era, where they're, the only care you can get is illegal care.
That's
and
right.
God help you if you survive it.
Exactly right. It's a sad, pathetic state. I thought we'd evolve past it, but we haven't. In Budapest, Hungary, a new anti-LGBTQ plus law banning pride events has been in effect, but there's even one step farther that they have gone. They're allowing authorities there to use facial recognition software to identify people attending the festivities illegally. This law was passed just yesterday. Several thousand protesters chanting anti-government slogans gathered after that vote outside of Hungary's parliament. They later staged a blockade of a major bridge over the Danube, blocking traffic, disregarding police instructions. This is part of a crackdown from Hungarian lawmakers, this new law, and they're cracking down on the country's LGBTQ plus community. And this is Viktor Orban. Viktor Orban, of course, is Trump's North Star, I think, on essentially taking over with a soft coup. So that is his latest. And again, you can't go to Pride parades, you can't go to Pride demonstrations, you can't go to Pride displays of any kind. And if you do, we will use facial recognition software to find you and to arrest you or ticket you. I think in Hungary, the ticket is like $600. So that's, and finally, in Law and Disorder, the 380 million year old fossils that were dumped in a landfill after New Jersey College didn't pay the UPS bill. This according to a lawsuit from William Patterson University. They had unpaid invoices, and 200 marine fossils ended up being discarded in Tennessee because these bills were unpaid.
Wait a minute.
Yeah.
They threw them in the garbage?
Into a landfill. 380 million year old fossils. A professor of environmental science and a paleontologist at William Patterson University had planned to collaborate with a colleague on a comprehensive monograph featuring this collection of fossils. Well, now those professors have had to file a civil suit in Passaic County. They spent hundreds and hundreds of hours collecting these marine invertebrate fossils from this high mountain area of Wayne, New Jersey. And they sent the priceless collection to one another for review. It was being sent to Florida to move forward with the project. Packaged about 200 fossils into 19 separate boxes, 80% of the entire collection, according to the lawsuit. Package weighed between 20 and 60 pounds. The fossils were taken to the university mailroom that day, given to a mailroom supervisor, who's also named in this lawsuit. UPS picked up the packages, and the package never arrived. The lawsuit says that the colleague in Florida said that fossils never got here. They got the tracking information. Days passed, and on September 20th, the professor advised the other professor that the fossil packages were possibly being held at the UPS fraud department. According to the lawsuit, the fraud department then ended up canceling the delivery, and the university's account had been canceled for lack of payment. They failed to pay outstanding invoices to UPS. And because of that, UPS just dumped the package into this landfill.
That is nuts.
Yeah. That, my friends, we'll keep you updated on the outcome of that lawsuit. That is law and disorder.
Tune in again next time for more Law and Disorder on The Mark Thompson Show.
All right, that's it. Let's roll. Hey, let's be careful out there.
All right, everyone.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Wednesdays are special. Our former colleague, he is a lecturer. He is a historian. He's a presidential historian. And I would guess that this moment in our nation's history stands alone in many ways. He's also an author. How about it for the great John Rothmann?
Thanks, Mark.
John, I was reading an article today about how so much is going on. It's very hard for the media to cover Donald Trump because I say Donald Trump just collectively, Doge, Donald Trump, this administration, these activists. What is the stuff that rises for you?
The whole thing is lawless. This is a lawless administration. And in normal times, Donald Trump would have been impeached by the House and convicted by the Senate. Regrettably, we have a Republican Party with no spine. It is not that the Democrats are in disorder. They haven't the votes to do anything. And actually, if you listen carefully to what many of the Democratic leadership are saying, and that's people who are progressives, people who are the old line people, doesn't matter. They're very good, actually, wonderful statements, but you don't have the votes to do anything. So it's up to two things. One, the midterm elections to see if the House can flip, and the second are the courts. And the courts are what we have to emphasize because they are the last bastion. The fact that, as you pointed out earlier in the program, Chief Justice Roberts issued a scathing comment without mentioning Trump's name, but clearly directed at Donald Trump. And the fact of the matter is, in the end, all of these major issues are going to end up with the Supreme Court. So we know that there can be a 5-4 majority, 3 conservatives and 2 liberals or 2 moderates, John Roberts and Amy Coney Barrett. So those are the 2 I'm looking at. And then the question is whether Donald Trump will defy the courts. I want to also indicate to you something unprecedented in American history, horrific in my mind, is that the Vice President of the United States has now been named the finance chairman of the Republican National Committee. You know, in the rush of events, people lose this. But do you understand the door is wide open to corruption, to bribery because of that? And all I can say is I think it's appalling. So if you ask me, my bottom line, it is we are now dependent on the fact that ultimately all of these issues will go to the Supreme Court. And we have to hope the Supreme Court acts appropriately. And if not, Mark, then I'm going to say something I hate to say. I've always believed in the American system. But if this does not occur, you may be right, because the American system will have been systematically destroyed by Donald Trump and his minions.
I think we're on our way, sadly. But
no, the Supreme Court. That's the hope.
Yeah.
And you have to believe, I want to believe, that Chief Justice Roberts and Amy Coney Barrett will join with the 3 liberal justices on the court. And then the question will be whether Donald Trump will comply. And if you listen to what people in his administration say, the answer is they're saying, screw the court. We don't care what they say. And when you get a Stephen Miller saying that, and yet a J.D. Vance saying that, it's appalling.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly right. I mean, we're headed toward that, and you have Musk calling for the impeachment of the judge.
Well, you can't. Let me tell you, this is the other thing, and Chief Justice Roberts' comment was absolutely appropriate. There's only been one justice of the Supreme Court who was ever impeached, Justice Story, in 1805, and he was not convicted. By the way, Aaron Burr presided at that trial. It was the last official action as he was vice president and president of the Senate. But in the end, I understand this because it was the Earl Warren court, it was the Warren Burger court, it was the Bill Rehnquist court. It was these courts are named after the Chief Justice, and I have to tell you that I think John Roberts understands clearly that if he fails in this, he will be the worst Chief Justice in American history.
Well, certainly would you characterize it as the worst court in American history then if he fails?
No, I'm not characterizing it that way yet because we haven't seen a tangible result. What you have is a court that has been packed, in theory, by conservatives. But I want to point out to you, the judge who made this ruling, who Trump wants to have removed, was put on the court by George W. Bush.
Yeah,
So,
I made that point before. It's crazy, John, isn't it? This is
by the way, I listened to you very carefully, which is why I know these facts. I want you.
No. I was just saying it's worth reiterating. I'm glad you did. John, how do we reinforce what the courts say? Asked Peter McLaren. Sorry. How do we enforce what the courts say when Trump ignores it totally? The federal marshals, they belong to Trump.
No, that's not what's going to happen. Let's assume that Donald Trump really, really disregards what happens. First of all, I have to believe, and maybe I'm wrong, that there are Republicans in Congress who will stand up and just say no. I think that they will understand that you can only go so far. That, by the way, is what happened to Richard Nixon. In the end, Republicans realized you could only go so far. And if you read The Final Days by Woodward and Bernstein, you get a classic example of why that straw on the camel's back finally was broken. But, I look, Mark, every day on Around the Political World with John Rothmann, I critique Donald Trump. It's almost redundant. It almost upsets me that I have to do it. I hope it upsets my listeners. I try to do it in a precise, contained fashion, but I intend to continue doing it with all of the affirmative response that I can give to a president whose corruption is so thorough, so complete, not only personally, but in terms of the American political system. And that's the thing that disturbs me, Mark, because our safety, your safety, my safety, depends on the fact that the system holds. If it doesn't, then I hate to say it, we will have lost the very essence of democracy. I'm just rereading Philip Roth's book, The Plot Against America, which is a fictitious account. If I were a novelist and this were 3 years ago, and I had written a novel with these scenarios that have been presented by Donald Trump and Elon Musk, my publisher in New York, my agent in New York would not have carried it to a publisher. They would have laughed me out of the office. And that's the ultimate tragedy.
Well, let me just follow up on what you said about Republicans. I don't have faith in their institutions, as we've reviewed before. I don't have faith in the American people, as we've reviewed before. And I think, frankly, I hate to say it, cynicism or skepticism or pessimism has been borne out more recently. But I'm hoping that some of the faith that you've expressed ultimately is borne out in the next couple of years, and that I can be proved wrong. But anyway, I'm getting to the follow-up, which is about the GOP. And you were saying, if you really were to challenge the courts and ignore the courts, et cetera, it would be likely that the GOP would begin to turn on him. So maybe you'll be interested in what's happening today on Capitol Hill at the Republican highest level in the House. You have hard right House Republicans with a new project. Anybody know what the new project is? Because Trump and Musk have called on the impeachment of this judge, impeaching federal judges who have questioned President Donald Trump's powers. That is the new project in the House of Representatives.
Yes, and it will fail. It will fail, and it has to fail, because otherwise the system will be completely broken. And I have to tell you, I'm so disappointed in the Republican Party of today. I used to argue with Republicans on issues. This is a matter of a cult of personality. So whatever the Republicans choose to do, whatever a few Republicans choose to do, we have to make sure it loses, and it loses big in the House. And I believe it will.
It is turning into a major distraction for the GOP on Capitol Hill, John. Trump calling on social media for the judge to be impeached. There is a lot of political capital that's going to go into this now because, as you know, this is a time-intensive effort, to try to impeach this judge.
But there's been no motion for impeachment. And even if a motion were to be presented, I believe it would fail.
Well, Representative Brandon Gill of Texas, a conservative hardliner, quickly following through on Trump's call, filing a measure to remove U.S. District Judge James Boasberg. Impeachment proceedings, even when they don't involve presidents, though, as I say, they can really be, they can sap resources and a lot of,
I've watched
a lot of political
judges,
capital.
I've seen federal judges impeached before. We have several examples, 3 or 4 examples in the last century. But I don't believe it will go that far. I think the Republicans are smart enough, and you're seeing it at the town meetings, where Republicans are showing up. Why do you think the Republican leadership has said, do your town meetings by Zoom? Why do you think they do that? Because Republicans are showing up who are furious. And by the way, this is not the only issue. We have the tariff question. And I must tell you, again, I'm completely bemused by the fact that the Republicans, who theoretically want greater control, would go along with the president as a dictator, because the Republican Party understands that in order to really have tariffs that are enforceable, you have to have a majority of Congress. And I would suggest to you that's the other legal challenge, which I know will come eventually. And that will be the question of whether a president has this kind of authority. But unless we stop it, and may I say, for those of you who say, well, John, you're always critical of Trump, you're always ragging on him. Listen to me carefully. If Joe Biden had pulled this, or if Barack Obama had pulled this, or if Bill Clinton pulled this, I would be just as outraged. The difference is the Republicans will be on my side if Democrats were to do such a thing. The spinelessness of the Republican Party, I think, is going to cause them to be the party of Donald Trump for years, and it will do the same damage that Herbert Hoover did to the Republican Party from 1932 to 1952.
Oh, you think
that is the case?
That's interesting, although I wonder if that is instructive as a historical milestone, John, because it feels as though we're now in waters that are uncharted. I don't know that there's an analog in history, is there?
Yeah, no, there is none. And these waters are charted if you obey the Constitution.
Sure.
If you understand what it means. So there is a chart, if you will, in terms of how to proceed. And the question is whether or not, and that's why when you have the Republicans clamoring now for the impeachment of a federal judge, how far will that go? And I don't believe it would pass the House of Representatives. I think there are enough Republicans who would say no. But this is part of what has to be presented to the American people in the midterm elections. The case has to be made effectively, powerfully, point by point by point. One of the things that's a problem for me every morning, because I only do 10 minutes, and you may say, well, 10 minutes, easy. No, 10 minutes, you got to condense everything.
When you say you only do 10 minutes, it's your podcast is what you're talking about.
Yes, my podcast.
Yeah.
Now, tomorrow I'm speaking to the Rotary Club in Oakland, California, and they will have a packed house. And I intend to unload in a far more detailed fashion. But we cannot let up even for a moment in saying to the American people, this is an attack on us. And I'm not after Donald Trump. Donald Trump is condemning himself, not only in terms of his presidency, but in terms of the eyes of history. And I made the offer to teach at the University of San Francisco. I want to do a course in 3 years on the Trump presidency, because I believe that history will turn against him. Republicans will turn against him. And I hope that's the case.
Well, I mean, it could be. I mean, but the carnage could be pretty substantial in the meantime.
Yeah, but you know what? We can recover from carnage. We've had carnage before in American politics.
All right. I mean, it depends.
You understand American politics recreates itself every 2 years for the Congress and every 4 years in terms of the presidency. And for every action, there's a reaction.
Here, I'll just offer this then, and just for starters, because we could go around the schoolyard as we always do, but that presumes a legitimate vote. I don't know that you'll have one. It presumes that he doesn't. He declared he used a wartime act, John, to deport a bunch of Venezuelans. We don't know anything about them. We have to take the
we have
government's
no idea
word
who
for
they
it.
are, where they are.
And he could use a wartime act, sir, to suspend even our ability to vote.
No,
I'm telling you.
Why are you yelling?
All right, so
I say to you, I want to be very clear. There was a suggestion in 1942 when America was at war, World War II, just broken out, to suspend the midterm elections of 1942. Democrats and Republicans combined and said, absolutely not. There will be a full, free, fair election. Now, if you want to know what I'm worried about, it's somebody like Elon Musk with his electronic ability tampering with the vote count.
Well, there you go. I mean, I didn't even get to that. I just offered you the first Trump thing. I could go on. Believe me, when it comes to the election, I think we're presuming a lot.
It's as silly as saying that Donald Trump can run for a third term. There's not a chance for snowball in hell if you obey the Constitution.
If you obey the Constitution, exactly.
And that's what telling you they won't obey the Constitution, then we are really, really lost. We're in deep trouble. And I may do what I've often threatened to do. I was going to seize an island in Stowe Lake in Golden Gate Park, declare it Rothmania, put up my own flag, and seek my own independence.
Right.
I don't think we're going to get that
far. Jim Riley, that's actually a really good thought. Can you put it back up there? The waters are uncharted because the difference today is social media and people in news silos. Exactly. I mean, the information that's getting to people is it's coming in filtered ways, to be polite. Here is a major piece of media power. It's Fox News Channel running a bit of Trump talking to Laura Ingraham, and I want to get your reaction on this. Go ahead, Albert, if you would, please.
$60 billion trade deficit. China has like a $300 billion last year. You said it goes up when you add it all up, it's $1 trillion.
Way over 100, Canada. And here's my problem with Canada. Canada was meant to be the 51st state because we subsidize Canada by $200 billion a year. We don't need their cars. We don't need their lumber. We have a lot of lumber. We freed it up, as you know, last week. We're freeing it up so that you can actually cut down a tree without being, given the death penalty. Because what these radical environmentalists have done to our country, but we freed it up. But we don't need their lumber. We don't need their energy. We don't need anything. We certainly don't want their automobiles. They make a lot of millions of automobiles are sent in. I'd rather have them made in Michigan. I'd rather have them made in South Carolina or any one of our.
You're tougher with Canada than you are with some of our biggest adversaries.
Only because it's meant to be our 51st state. And
okay, but
but listen to this for a second.
We need their territory. They have territorial advantage. We're not going to let them get close to China.
Look, right? I deal with every country, indirectly or directly. One of the nastiest countries to deal with is Canada. The people that, now this was Trudeau, the people that good old Justin, I call him Governor Trudeau, his people were nasty and they weren't telling the truth. They never told the truth. You know that, they'd say, well, we don't charge. Well, they do. They charge tremendous. And if you look at dairy products, what they've done to our farmers, I'd go up to Iowa, I'd go up to different places, Nebraska, and they would always complain about Canada, how they get ripped off. Do you know that Canada has a 250% tariff? 250, nobody knows that. They charge us numbers that are crazy. We have a very big deficit with Canada, and there's no reason, much more, we have much more. Just so you understand, we subsidize Canada, and I like Canada. I love Canada. I love Wayne Gretzky.
The Liberal guys,
I love his wife.
The Liberal Party is going to win now in the next election, most likely. And they were down and out. Isn't that going to make them more hostile to us and possibly
I'd rather deal with a liberal than a
for China closer to Canada, and that would really put us in a bind.
The conservative that's running is stupidly no friend of mine. I don't know him, but he said negative things. So when he says negative things, I couldn't care less. I think it's easier to deal actually with a liberal. And maybe they're going to win, but I don't really care. It doesn't matter to me at all.
So your end game is what with them?
My end game is I don't want to have a big deficit. I don't want to see the United States of America, and you say 60 and I say 200, but it doesn't matter. I don't want us to pay 60 or $200 billion to a country that if they were a state, think of this, it would be our biggest, most beautiful, it would be great. This state, it would be cherished. We'd take care of it. The people would pay half what they're paying right now. Canada pays very little for defense. They think we're going to defend them.
We protect them.
What?
We protect them.
We protect them. We protect them. Do you know in NATO, they pay less than anybody else? In everything else, they go, we're in the process of buying 48 icebreakers. All of a sudden, I see Canada's involved where they're going to get a piece of them. I say, what are they paying? And so I got tired of it. Here's the story. I had one of the most successful economies. I had the most successful economy.
All right. Thank you.
May I quickly just point out to you, Canada is not going to become the 51st state. By the way, do you know whose picture Donald Trump hung in the Oval Office? James K. Polk. Why? Because Polk acquired territory for the United States. And did you note that in Greenland, there was an election and all 5 of the major political forces in Greenland said they don't want anything to do with being part of the United States? The absurdity of what Donald Trump is doing is so profound and so dangerous, I can't even begin to tell you.
Well, the other thing I mean, it's absurd on its face, as John says. The whole thing is ridiculous. And it's just the 51st state part is absolutely absurd. I mean, look, this is a crew that won't give Puerto Rico and Washington, D.C. statehood because
no, of course not. You know why?
Because they're worried about Democratic votes.
Exactly.
And so, so if you look at Canada, you'll see that you have that same problem. Assuming you could even, I mean, it's ridiculous. The entire thing is a ridiculous notion. I mean, literally, that's the perfect word for it. But it's lunacy. But now you get to the tariffs, John. That's not. It's also crazy, but it is real. And I'm wondering how you game out that back and forth.
Look, all I can tell you is Congress has abdicated its responsibility. I do not believe the president has the ability or the responsibility to impose tariffs. Congress should assert itself as it did in the Smoot-Hawley tariff battle of 1930 and 1933. It was Congress that voted those tariffs, and it was Congress that repealed them. And again, it will require a case being made by the Democrats to the American people, and I think we're going to feel it. When we start going to Target and to Walgreens and to other outlets and find these huge price increases, it's not a temporary thing that we can just fluff off. But do you understand what makes me so frustrated? If I had hair, I'd have lost it, is the whole question of a president's arrogance of power. I am convinced that in the end, Donald Trump will be brought down by his own hubris. The fact that the Chief Justice of the United States could make a statement like he did was because of the hubris of Donald Trump.
Well, that's the Hollywood version of the ending, that he's brought down by his own hubris, and he may be. But I'm concerned with the damage between now and then, even assuming that does happen. I don't see, I mean, he's got hubris on 11, man. He just cranked it all the way up.
You're right. And take a look, by the way, you and I have been in broadcasting for years. The Voice of America, Radio Free Europe, these institutions which sent the message of America around the world, created during World War II and surviving all the way, he is dismantling, destroying that effective voice. And you know what he called it? Propaganda. Propaganda.
Well,
all I can tell you is it's
John,
absurd.
It is propaganda for the West. It is propaganda, useful propaganda. It's the soft power that is part of the way that we reach out to fascistic regimes, people who are suffering under authoritarianism. Absolutely.
When there was an Iron Curtain, I was on Radio Free Europe and the Voice of America repeatedly during the height of the Cold War.
I did not know that. That's a good brag. Finally, you get a good brag from Rothmann. Okay.
I'm just telling you. The reason was our struggle for human rights in the Soviet Union, particularly the issue of Soviet Jews.
Did you take calls when you were on Voice of America,
yes,
John?
Actually.
Did you?
I was
wow.
How about that? I was. And I regret more than I can say that we don't have that vehicle today in San Francisco.
Well, we have this, John. And
that's why I support you.
I'm grateful for your contributions. You can find John on his podcast, Around the Political World with John Rothmann. It is it's a way to start the day. It's 10 minutes every day.
And for our San Francisco or Northern California-based people, for the Voice of San Francisco, all you have to do is go to podcasts. I do a daily podcast, again, about 10 minutes for the Voice of San Francisco. But the thing I look forward to each week is being with you. And next week, I'm not here on Wednesday. I'm here on Thursday next week.
Wow, I did not know that. All right.
Yes,
we will
check your schedule. Okay. I don't want to disappoint people next week. I have a speaking engagement that I have to fulfill. So I want you to know that I will be here on Thursday, and I can't wait. How am I going to get by a whole week without being on the Mark Thompson program?
John Rothmann, everybody. Thanks, John. Bye-bye.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Shadoe Stevens. This is the Mark Thompson Show. Keep it to yourself.
Right on, everybody. Very cool to have Brother Rothmann in always. Thank you for being here. Smash that like button like a
with
boss.
your iron rod.
Yeah. Get into it. Rothmann always confident that those American institutions are going to take care of things. Me, no. I'm not at all confident of that, as you're well aware. I hope I'm hoping for a good outcome, but not clear. The commissioner of Marks Madness has re-entered the ring. Albert, please speak.
We have the second round of the first day of drops to get to.
The second round of the first day. 2 drops go up against each other. These are our audio sound drops. You'll vote on which one you like more. That should continue on to the next round. You'll do the voting on our YouTube channel in the posts section. Where it says posts, go there and you'll see the voting there. So now, without any further delay and before our next guest joins us, time to get some Marks Madness on.
Now, Marks Madness.
You better believe it. Only one moves on to the next round, everybody. You'll vote for either...
Hey, Mark, it's George Santos here.
The George Santos drop, or...
You do not know what you are talking about.
Oh, the Fauci drop. That's right. It is either...
Hey, Mark, it's George Santos here.
Or...
You do not know what you are talking about.
Vote in the post section of our YouTube channel. Only one moves on, and good luck! I'm excited about Marks Madness. There is nothing that takes my breath away and gets me excited like Marks Madness every year. We do it in parallel to March Madness. They have hoops, and we have our drops. So, Kim, without any further delay, I'd like to move on, if it please the court. Is that okay? Kim is sort of our...
I find this to be acceptable. Move
in-house
forward.
producer,
Yes.
sort of in the moment.
Kim, how are you?
Yeah, and
let's go.
So, and I might add that she actually filled out a bracket for Marks Madness this year, which is quite extraordinary for Kim, because normally she hasn't had a bracket. So I think this is a sign of something really good happening with her.
It's groundbreaking.
Yeah.
I'm not going to win, but I'm playing.
Well, very few win, but we do have the bottle of Why Are You Yelling red wine, our proprietary wine made at Tenuta Vineyard, that will be going to the winner. And let me just mention this. We have to buy the wine just like you do. So, I mean, I'm just...
What?
I know. I'm just saying it is a gift that we're actually giving you, not a freebie. Now, we're starting a segment on this show, and is it time for it? We usually do it at 12:15, I guess, Pacific time. But I think we can start it now, just in, particularly with the kind of content load. There's quite a lot of content this week on it. We like to check in on issues involving medicine and science, disease, and those things that are so very relevant to our health. We do it in a new segment called Vital Signs.
Looking for some good medical advice?
Supposing you brought the light inside the body.
Let's hear what a real doctor has to say. This is Vital Signs on the Mark Thompson Show.
How about it for Dr. Michael Daignault? He is a real ER doctor and has been so active in the past. Former Peace Corps volunteer. You're a good guy, Dr. Michael Daignault.
Thank you. That's what they say.
Yeah, it's really, really cool. So the CDC is announcing this study on a link between vaccines and autism. Now, I thought they already had debunked that or had already done sufficient research in this area, and there was evidence that there isn't a link. Can you speak to this?
Right. Yeah, I think I was as shocked as you. Well, maybe not so much shocked anymore these days. Every day I wake up and the first thing I do is I look at the news and I'm just like, I can't catch up. But so just to give you some background information, you're 100% right. But the study that started this all back in 1998 was published in the Lancet Journal by Dr. Andrew Wakefield. As we all know, it was a study of 12 children with autism. There was no control study. It was very dubious research methods. He had ties already to vaccination litigation firms, as it were. And that's the study that RFK Jr., Jenny McCarthy, all the anti-vax people have sort of latched on for years, since 1998. And it basically attested that there was a link between autism and the MMR vaccine, which is in the news right now for obvious reasons. And so subsequently, that study was thrown out. It was retracted. Dr. Wakefield lost his medical license. And in the following years, there's been so many studies that were done to refute this. forgive me for like looking at some of them online here because I try to memorize a lot of things.
No. Please consult whatever. Yeah.
It was unbelievable. I mean, I knew that it had been done, but when I dove deep again, I couldn't believe it. So the Denmark cohort study in 2002 was 500,000 kids born between 91 and 98. There was no difference in autism rates between kids that were vaccinated and unvaccinated. That was published in New England Journal of Medicine. The Finland study in 2005, another 500,000 children who received the MMR vaccine. There was no increased risk of autism, no clustering of autism cases after vaccination. And then the meta-analysis. So just to let our viewers know, meta-analysis is the highest form of research that we have. It basically looks at all the studies that were done on a particular topic and groups all them together. It's the strongest form of research, evidence-based science, evidence-based medicine that we look for. And this included 1.2 million kids from multiple studies. And there was no link between vaccines and autism. And I think the thing we have to remember is you always have to look at things with caution when there's a correlation between two data points. It seems that they're linked, but you have to understand that correlation doesn't imply causation. And so over that same period of time, there's been an increase in diagnoses of kids with autism just because of greater awareness. The DSM-5, which is how we diagnose, was more inclusive of different categories of autism on the autism spectrum. And so in 2000, 1 in 150 kids were diagnosed with autism. And then in 2020, now it's 1 in 36. So you're having an increased number of kids that are diagnosed with autism during that same period of time. And this is just a key cautionary point. If you look at science where the anti-vax community, particularly those against the MMR vaccine, are trying to say that correlation implies causation. But we have so many studies, including that meta-analysis, that did not find any link. So the fact that the CDC is going to spend time and research and money on this topic that's been explored and debunked is beyond me. I don't know why the Republicans and MAGA are just so scared of science, to be honest.
Yeah, it's troubling. And I also wonder to what degree they're reverse engineering these studies. I mean, I think they are so vested in the outcome. They want to prove that there is a link. And so you always worry about those studies. It's like the coffee industry doing those studies about how coffee is better for you than, a daily cup of coffee is actually a life extension device, et cetera. So I wonder about that. I did want to ask you, just while we're on it, you can certainly have a reaction to a vaccine, and it can be a violent reaction to a vaccine, right, doctor?
Right. And you can have, pain at the site. You can have fevers and chills. That's your body mounting an immune response. And so one thing we looked at during the pandemic was to see if there was a connection between how strongly people had a reaction. I'm talking about local reaction, like swelling, pain, fevers and chills that first day after you get the shot, connecting that to the immune response. And we actually found that people with a stronger adverse reaction actually mounted a stronger immune response. And so that was kind of a good thing to be able to tell patients, especially if they came to the ER, if they were having some pain after vaccination, that, well, actually you're having a very strong reaction to this vaccine. That means your immune system is firing. And, research shows that you're going to generate a stronger, more robust response.
That's interesting. Really interesting. All right. Now I want to get to the Dr. Oz stuff. Dr. Oz was involved in a congressional hearing, right? You watched it or read the transcript or you're familiar with it? Give everybody an idea. Now, this Dr. Oz, remind us, he was a darling of Oprah. He had his own show. He rose to real national and even international prominence, I think, as a result of that. And then he became sort of what's that?
He won some Emmys, 10 Emmys.
Oh, there you go. The TV show. And the TV show seemed good. It's kind of like what you do, explaining complex health situations to the general public. And yet he became sort of a pitchman for supplements and the kind of get out of jail free supplements where you kind of take this supplement pill and you'll never have to worry about fill in the blank. Give me the story on Dr. Oz from your perspective and the latest on him, please.
Yeah, it was really interesting. I was driving home from my shift last night at 2 a.m, and what better thing to listen to than his opening speech at the hearing yesterday. And to be honest, I was like, I'm going to go in with an open mind and listen to this on the drive home. And he has a really interesting background. He did a lot of great work. He developed a lot of great devices for cardiothoracic surgery and things like that, and that have been proven to save lives. And during the course of his speech, he made a couple really good points. He said that he would like to see more transparency for patients as far as like their insurance and how to navigate that system. I mean, we're all for that. And the second one, he said he wants to see AI kind of take a greater role in helping physicians be more efficient in their job so that they could spend more time with their patients. And yes, we are all for that. I mean, I wish I could take you to a shift one day just so you could see how much clicking we have to do within the electronic medical record for every patient, like the amount of time we spend documenting versus the amount of time that we spend with patients. And so I'm glad that he wants to take that up. I mean, that's going to be no small feat for sure, because Congress is the one that sort of directs doctors to meet all these metrics and do all these things. And that's the reason why we are very not efficient sometimes when it comes to documenting and not being able to spend enough time with patients. So, and he said that he's all for protecting the vulnerable and preserving Medicaid and Medicare. But I worry that with like Medicare Advantage, for example, that's the private insurers part of Medicare, that he has said before he wanted to privatize Medicare. And that I feel like is going to leave a lot of people in the lurch, as it were. And in the current climate of just cutting, I'm just really scared that they're going to take the hatchet to Medicare and Medicaid, despite what he said yesterday.
Yeah, I was actually looking to the quotes because he kind of skirted the Medicare Medicaid thing. He didn't really commit to the notion that it was going to be protected. I think, as you are suggesting, he sort of put it out there as something that would exist, but it would probably exist in the private sector, would be the way you'd fill in that blank, because he was so careful about the way he approached it. So that's Dr. Oz, but he all of a sudden is going to be pretty relevant to our future, I guess. So that's the latest. What's happening, against this backdrop? There's this measles outbreak, started in Texas, then it was New Jersey, then there's more in Oklahoma. I wonder if you can update me on where the measles situation ends up in America right now.
Well, I think the big news this week was that the total number of cases, I think it's as of yesterday, was 353, has already surpassed the total we had in last year, which was 285. And, in 2000, we had eradicated measles. And this is only the third time since 2000 that cases have gone over 200. And it's only March. The concerning thing, last time we were on here, we were actually giving credit to RFK Jr. for that op-ed that he wrote in Fox News, expressing that people needed to be vaccinated. And, we appreciated that. But, it's just, since then, he's basically gone back to the same anti-vax craziness. He said something the other day that I want to address on here. He said that the protection from the measles vaccine goes down 4.5% every year after you're vaccinated. And that's simply not true. I mean, if that were true, we would all have measles.
Right.
Like we would have zero immunity at this point.
Sure.
And if that were actually true, you would see many adults sick. You would see the entire population sick. And so you have to remember that whether it's, vaccination or people that born before 1950 that got measles infected, that's lifetime immunity. And that's because the vaccine in particular just creates robust memory cells. So just to give you some more background, like when you get exposed to measles, it can take 7 to 21 days before you start showing symptoms. And so during that time, your immune system, when you're vaccinated, can rev up those memory cells, remind them that, hey, 40, 50 years ago, you got the MMR vaccine, create some antibodies to protect this person from becoming infected. And so we know that works just looking at what happens in the general population, that the vast majority of us have been vaccinated with the MMR vaccine and we're not getting sick.
As long as we're on RFK, the article I was reading last night, or not important when, it was about bird flu. And his prescription for attacking bird flu is to let it spread. He wants to let it spread on all these farms. I was telling everybody about this in the first hour. And the idea is that by letting it spread, much of the bird population will contract this and die, but some of that bird population, he's alleging, this is his kind of suggestion, will not get it. And then we have to focus on the genetics of those birds to realize the kind of natural immunity that could be acquired, or even in developing various therapies or modalities of treatment, we have to look at those creatures. Now, I was saying that's not the way they raise poultry anymore. It's not a natural environment. These are warehouses of these creatures packed in. It's horrifying. But beyond that, the genetic makeup is fairly uniform. So you're not going to have this kind of, it wouldn't be like the natural population where there would be some natural genetic resistance to perhaps this virus. You know what I mean, Doctor? That's based on the little I know, it just seems tragically flawed.
Yeah, it's kind of like the whole let it rip, let it spread policy that some people wanted during COVID, including the nominee for to run the NIH right now. It's called the Great Barrington Declaration that they signed, basically attesting to this policy that protect the vulnerable, but in the general healthy population, just let the virus rip, create a lot of natural immunity. And you hit the nail on the head. That's not how it works with poultry farms. Like, for biosecurity, the measures that are in place right now at farms, if you have a number of poultry or particular poultry that are infected, the whole group gets culled. Like you said, they're in such tight quarters, and millions of birds have been culled for this reason. And that's just because they're in tight quarters. It's so easy for it to spread among the poultry that are already there. And so you just have to take down the whole population. And that's why egg prices are so high and have been so high. It's just because like a few birds get it and that whole group gets taken down. Yeah,
Indeed. It's interesting. Of course, he doesn't want to cull any of the birds right now. This is the new RFK Jr. plan is don't cull any birds. But veterinary scientists say letting the virus sweep through poultry flocks unchecked would be inhumane and dangerous and have enormous economic consequences. It's a terrible idea, said Dr. Gail Hansen, a former state veterinarian for Kansas. For any number of reasons, it's a terrible idea. Every infection is another opportunity for the virus called H5N1 to evolve to a more virulent form. You talked about that with us before, the way these mutations are created. And geneticists have been tracking its mutations closely, and so far the virus has not developed the ability to spread among people. We should say that, right?
Right. But, not among people, like from person to person, but it has infected farm workers and people with close contact with sick birds. But you're right, yes.
And they're saying to let it run through a flock of 5 million birds would be to allow literally 5 million chances for the virus to replicate or mutate. And then you've got problems. I mean, this is a horrible situation, but it's made more horrible by the strategy that RFK Jr. is laying down.
Yeah, it always, cases like this always remind me of the great quote from Jeff Goldblum in Jurassic Park, where he said, "Life finds a way." And it's so appropriate for this situation. Like, if you were to let it rip and just do its thing and the virus continues to replicate and has so many opportunities, it's going to find a way to be efficient at spreading from human to human. Because if you control the poultry, the livestock, the virus, as any life form, is just going to find other outlets to spread, and we would be the next target. And so, just a quick point about how viruses replicate. The way that nature amazingly designed them is that the replication is imperfect. So when you look at an RNA strand virus and the different cells that come down that copy it, it's imperfect, and there's mutations that are just inbred in this process. And every time that replicates, just think about how many mutations just exponentially happen. And so that enables the virus to adapt and survive. Darwinism, the best adapted virus will be the one that becomes the dominant strain. And so you just give it more opportunity to replicate. That's what's going to happen.
I want to get to what to do in the ER since you're an ER doctor. I'll do that in just a second, but I wanted to touch on this announcement from Google. They are going to add AI for healthcare searches, and they're expanding, they say, knowledge panels to cover thousands more health topics. They're going to be available in more countries, more languages, and more AI. They have a what people suggest feature that will allow people to easily search through online commentaries from patients with similar diagnoses. And that's oftentimes where you get some of the truth about recovery and diagnosis. And I mean, you get it from other people who've been through it.
Yeah.
But the addition of AI is pretty substantial. I'm wondering how AI is used in your practice and if you use it and to what extent you have faith in AI being part of the one more modality by which we can look at health.
Yeah, I'm a big fan. I mean, I use ChatGPT daily, multiple times a day. I don't even use like Google or any other search engines anymore, just because of the level of analysis. So when you do a simple Google search, you're going to get pages that just have the most number of terms that you searched on them in decreasing order, right? But I think what I love about, in particular, ChatGPT is that it can collate all that data into bullet points or however you want the data to be presented to you, and then it gives you analysis. And so oftentimes there are patients at work that I encounter in the ER that are difficult diagnoses, for example, and you're not sure what's going on. And you can input symptoms, you can input the test that you've done so far and ask it to generate a differential diagnosis. And I have found that extremely, extremely helpful. Just because there's just so much information that we're taught in med school, and oftentimes it's hard to remember all that. And so just having that tool just sort of triggers it for me. And it's like, okay, yes, I remember this. Now I know the next steps to be able to diagnose or help this patient. So I would love to see it as far, going back to what Dr. Oz was saying, if it increases efficiency for us, almost like if you had a device in the room with the patient that was HIPAA compliant, that would listen to your conversation, that what the patient is saying they're there for, listen to what I'm saying, and put that and generate that into a medical note. That would be huge. That would allow us, because we want to spend more time with our patients. And if we could have that key, that would be amazing. I would be all for that.
That's fascinating. I mean, it's fascinating to see how it's integrated into daily healthcare strategies. And this is to follow up on, because let's really, as they say, put a pin in that, because I really would like to follow up. All right, so you're an ER doctor, and I thought we'd kind of, I saw something I think it was in the New York Times about, things you should do before you go into the ER, or what you should keep in mind when you go to the ER, or something like that. And I thought, oh my God, we've got to ask you about that. And you had already done something like this before. So take us to your ER tips, or those things related to the ER, since you are an ER doctor. This is kind of your home court.
Yeah, I love that article in the New York Times, and it reminded me of one that I wrote in USA Today a couple years ago called Do's and Don'ts of the ER. And it was just, suggestions for people just to get through their ER visit. So the number one thing I would say is don't wait it out, especially for symptoms like chest pain or stroke, because those particular symptoms are very time dependent. The interventions that we can do in the ER, particularly for stroke. So for example, at let's say 1:00 p.m., you develop facial droop, slurred speech, can't move the left side of your body, classic symptoms of a stroke. If you get to most ERs within 4 hours, you're a candidate for thrombolytics, which is a very powerful clot buster medication that we give through the IV to break up that clot. If you present to the ER within 24 hours, you're a candidate for thrombectomy, which is the neurointerventional radiologist goes in and literally takes out the clot. And so if you're there within 4 hours, you're a candidate for both of those things, and it really portends well for your survival and recovery of your stroke symptoms. So unfortunately, a lot of patients wait it out. They see how they feel. They want to give it a day. And then by the time they come in, there's nothing we can do, and those deficits are permanent. The other big thing is, I hate to have to bring this up, but don't assume that if you call 911 and come by ambulance that you're going to be able to jump the line and get into a bed in the ER faster. That's why we have the triage process set up. You're met, whether you walk in or you come by ambulance, by a triage nurse who assigns your a severity index to what you're coming in for and puts you in the right spot. So I don't want people to think that they can jump the line doing that. You always want to make sure you bring a list of your doctors, your medications, medical problems. I've had so many patients say, well, look it up on your computer. Going back to the whole AI thing, we don't have a centralized medical record. Like different hospitals use different emergency medicine hospital records that are not integrated. So it's really important that you know your doses and your medications. Just carry a small laminated card with you. Focus on the main reason you're in the ER. Pick one thing, and please bring your own charger. Bring something to read. I would say
you go back on that 4-hour thing. I'm thinking, great, doc, I can get to the ER in that 4-hour time, but then you guys make me wait for 4 hours to get in to see a doctor.
You wait 4 hours for 15 minutes with the doctor.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
But you're saying, this is interesting. I don't have any of these things that you're talking about. It's probably a good idea. You need to know what medications you're on. A little laminated card would do all of that.
It's so helpful because, oftentimes we do make changes to medication. We do need to get in touch with your doctor, especially if you've had a procedure recently. And, the assumption of the general public is that all that information is just readily available for us. And it's not, and it can be very difficult to find.
I have a surgery tomorrow on my hand.
What are you doing? What are you getting
I
done?
have a trigger finger on this hand. Okay. Mm-hmm. And so they're doing, it's a pretty straightforward surgery. I'm told it's not that big a deal.
Like a release? Like a trigger release?
To which I said to the doctor, sure, not a big deal to you. You're just doing the surgery. You're going home or playing golf. I got to actually recover. So, tomorrow afternoon I'll do the show and then I'll get it done. But I'm a little bit anxious about it, but it's because it's not a general anesthesia. I'm not worried about that part. I'm more worried about the recovery, which I think can be a little painful. And, I'm also, I'm in the middle of Mark's Madness. I have to press buttons and know what's happening here. So, but rehydrating or making sure you're hydrated before surgeries, any of that stuff matter or not really?
It depends on the surgery and how extensive it is, and also whether you're allowed to eat or drink before.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
Are you? Do they have you slated for physical therapy after too, or?
Yeah, I think they do. They that's a big part of it actually, to recover some kind of
Oh yeah.
So
yeah, I think that's probably the surgery is just a small part, but what you commit to PT is really gonna predict how well you recover.
Yeah. No, that's exactly right. I mean, you really have, it's time consuming, but that's what you have to do. Somebody paid you a compliment. Ricky O'Bear says, great guest. Remember, the Red Cross needs you. Only 8% of those who can donate. Yeah, I guess it's not, blood donation is, I don't know.
We lost a lot of blood donations like during COVID. There was a huge dearth in blood. And there was a time, I think during the pandemic, where we changed our criteria for transfusion. So interestingly, the cutoff that we've always used is a hemoglobin of 7. And the other day I was like, why? I wonder why it's 7. There's got to be a good reason biomedically why the cutoff is 7. And I looked it up, and it's because 7 was considered a lucky number. I could not believe it. So, and this is dogma across hospitals, ERs, that you don't transfuse unless the hemoglobin is under 7. And I always assumed there was a real, it's because 7 was considered lucky. And everybody adopts this policy. It's crazy.
I love it. I love it. Look, good stuff. We'll talk more in 2 weeks. We'll compile plenty to address. And if people have any questions, we'll integrate them for next time. Reach us here, the Mark Thompson Show at gmail.com. He's the great Dr. David Daignault. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time. Bye, doctor. That's Vital Signs for today.
Check your vital signs again next time, only on the Mark Thompson Show.
The Mark Thompson Show.
It was great. I loved it.
How would you handle this? We could try ignoring it, sir.
Morning.
You cannot say you love your country.
Where are my weed smokers at?
Stay at home and get baked.
Right on. on, everybody. Yeah, we are in the middle of Mark's Madness. You know it. Mark's Madness brings them to the yard,
Mark's
baby.
Madness.
Yeah.
I can't believe it.
We have two shaping up to be close in this hour. It's either...
Hey, Mark. It's George Santos here.
Or it's...
You do not know what you are talking about.
Again, you'll vote for either...
Hey, Mark. It's George Santos here.
Or...
You do not know what you are talking about.
You can vote in the posts section of our YouTube channel. We have two races going on right now, and good luck! Oh my gosh, Albert, the excitement. I'm overwhelmed every March by March Madness. I love it. Doctor was great. If you haven't participated in March Madness before, this is your chance. You don't actually have to have a bracket. There are people who have brackets. There are ways in which you could have gotten a bracket. We took everybody through all those ways, but let's say you missed it or you forgot. It's fine. You can still be an integral part of it, because if you vote in the posts section of our YouTube channel, where all the sound drops live, you will be able to influence the outcome, for example, of today and who will go on to the next round.
Yeah, if you're beefing with anybody in the comment section, you could, and if they have a bracket, you could bust their bracket by your vote. Yeah. So if you have a gripe with some other commenter, this is your time.
Such a great call. I love that idea.
Ooh, it's a wild idea, but it just might work.
Exactly.
There's no gripes. This is a
Settle the
peace
beef.
crowd.
Yeah.
You know.
Really, really wild. JL Chauvin coming up, the comedian, political commentator. We've done a lot today. I wanted to get a little bit of news from Kim. Can you do a turbo news before JL gets here?
Absolutely can do that.
Smash that like button if you would, everyone. It helps us in the YouTube universe.
With your iron rod.
And also, you can, if you haven't, please do subscribe to the show. It's a free show. We do it live every day from 2 to 4 in the East, from 11 to 1 in the West.
Smash it with your iron rod.
And don't forget to hit the like button. But it is a free show. And we're also on all the podcast platforms as an audio podcast. Someone was saying they didn't see I don't see the second voting.
I think that was Sandy. It is live. I double checked it, but it
where
is on
the post section. Some of us don't see it. Albert, do you want to walk us through where the post section is again?
Post section, or check your subscription box if you are subscribed to the show. So friendly to reminder to subscribe to the show.
Yeah.
But if you get to our YouTube page, there's some tabs here: home, videos, shorts, lives, and it'll see right next to playlists and store. In between those two is posts.
Yeah, between playlists and store is posts, and there it is.
And
the
both
first
votes
hour
are here and they're live.
Yeah, so you can see right now Fauci leading George Santos, and Trump Concepts is leading Shame, which surprises me. I will tell you, I thought Shame would really rock it.
Yeah, I think I had George Santos also going deep, so my bracket might be
my bracket is blowing up right away. Crazy. Anyway, all right, Kim's news, and we continue. Mark Thompson Show.
On the Mark Thompson Show, I'm Kim McAllister. This report is sponsored by CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. President Trump is optimistic for a ceasefire between Ukraine and Russia. Trump spoke with Ukrainian President Zelensky for about an hour today, said it was a very good call. In a post on Truth Social, Trump said the call was focused on what he and Russian President Putin talked about yesterday, so they could align both Ukraine and Russia in terms of what they're asking for. Okay. Well, we'll see how this goes. The Federal Reserve isn't adjusting interest rates. This comes as Fed Chair Jerome Powell said they are not in a hurry to bring rates any lower. Meanwhile, tensions remain between the United States and trade partners as Trump moves forward with the tariff plans that he has. The Social Security Administration is requiring in-office visits for identity verification. The SSA website now says that to start a benefits claim, an individual's identity must be confirmed, and it has to happen in person. Previously, people could do so over the phone.
This is, again, this is looking for a problem where there isn't one. This is one of the most waste-free institutions in Washington, Social Security. IRS is in that same category. I mean, I get it that there's fraud in all of these different agencies. Of course there is. But this idea somehow that you will make people now come in person. I mean, almost by definition, people who require Social Security support in many instances, they don't have an ability to get to wherever the office is. Of course, they're closing offices nationwide now.
Closing these offices. How do you do it in person if your local office is shut down?
So they're creating the very problems that they say that they are solving.
A federal judge is giving the Trump administration's lawyers more time to provide information on deportation flights conducted last weekend. U.S. District Judge James Boasberg wants answers on the timing of the flights that he ordered to turn around on Saturday. The Trump administration has until noon tomorrow to give the judge more information or invoke state secrets doctrines that allows the government to block discourse of information that it feels would harm national security. Second batch of files related to the assassination of former President John F. Kennedy have been released. This comes after the Trump administration released the first batch of documents Tuesday. According to the National Archives, more than 63,000 pages were released between both batches. Officials have said most of the government's issues around the assassination had already been made public prior to this release. Here's something great for people in the Bay Area. Parking meter rates could be going up again in San Francisco. The SFM, if you don't know,
if you can find a spot, good luck in San Francisco.
It's extraordinarily expensive to park in the city. The SFMTA announced a plan Tuesday that would potentially raise parking rates in the city in an attempt to raise city revenue because they've got a budget deficit. Drivers are speaking out, though, saying parking is already expensive, and with a potential recession or Trump session looming, the city shouldn't be looking to dig deeper into residents' pockets. California lawmakers proposing new legislation to protect streams and wetlands following a Supreme Court ruling in 2023 that weakened federal clean water protections. Supporters claim the bill is essential as relaxed standards could increase pollution and harm water quality. A Hollywood director is being accused of scamming Netflix out of $11 million. Director Carl Rinsch indicted on federal charges of fraud and money laundering for allegedly spending millions on luxury cars and bad crypto deals instead of making a sci-fi series for Netflix. Hey, wait a minute. Cars and crypto. Rinsch directed the 2013 film 47 Ronin with Keanu Reeves and was set to be the showrunner for a sci-fi series called White Horse on Netflix. The streaming service pulled the series after losing $55 million on the project. The FBI says it arrested the 47-year-old director Tuesday in West Hollywood. Speaking of Hollywood news, actress Gal Gadot's Hollywood Walk of Fame ceremony was briefly delayed by dozens of protesters yesterday. There were dueling protests about the conflict between Israel and Hamas right before Gadot was going to receive her star. The protest delayed the event on Hollywood Boulevard, only about 15 minutes, but people could still be heard chanting once the ceremony started as well.
I don't know. I'm sorry. Gal Gadot doesn't need me to speak up for her. All I will just say is what I say about all of these things. I just don't think you help yourself. I mean, look, I'm vegan. You don't see me standing up in the middle of a restaurant and going, how come there's foie gras on this menu? You people are, we should get it. I mean, the reason is because you make more people, you make more haters, I think, than you make your point. It always troubles me, just like I feel like you shouldn't go to Mitch McConnell's house. I think he's a loathsome guy. I think he's really one of the reasons that we are in the situation we're in America. And you shouldn't throw paint at his house and all this guy. I don't know. I really have an issue with it. To me, it is, I understand you have to make noise and you have to make your point and you have to get through and you have to punch through. But at least for me, I think it's, you lose more than you gain. And so I walk away from that Gal Gadot thing thinking, they ruined this event. So, and that's not to say that they don't have a legitimate point. I mean, about Israeli policy and all that, but she's not the prime minister. She's an actress. So anyway, go ahead.
Lastly, the best airport in the country has been named. You're a traveler, Mark. Any guesses as to what the best airport in America
that's
would be?
Great question. I don't think I travel. Probably JL might know. He probably flies around more than I do. But no, I don't have a thought. If you want to guess, I will guess.
Yeah, go give me a guess.
Okay. I'm gonna guess. I'm gonna guess Denver, maybe, or someplace like that.
Wow. The best airport in America, New York's LaGuardia,
I was gonna
as
go for
named by
JFK.
Forbes Travel Guide. The Port
Wow.
Authority accepted the Verified Air Travel Award, naming LaGuardia as the country's top airport during a ceremony today. They have their recently completed Terminal C, built and operated by Delta Airlines there. The award based on a survey of 5,000 hospitality and travel experts.
Wow.
The hub, once known as the nation's worst airport, was called once like a third world country by then Vice President Biden, underwent an $8 billion transformation. Apparently it worked because LaGuardia is now at the top of the heap.
Wow. I guess it did work. Yeah. All
This
right.
report is sponsored by Coachella Valley Coffee. CoachellaValleyCoffee.com doesn't really tell the story because they have the most amazing teas. It should be Coachella Valley Coffee and Tea.
Oh, yeah.
But tea, once again, gets shuffled to the bottom of the stack. It's ridiculous because their tea is amazing.
Yeah.
Best tea I've ever had in my life, and it's not even in the title.
It's Kim's always bothered about something. I love it. I'm having the coffee, which is coffee's amazing. I went for the Ocotillo espresso. Their tasting notes around the teas, their tasting notes around the coffees. They do remarkable stuff. It's a boutique roastery. It's all hand roasted, and you can get them at CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. Do use our checkout code MarkT for 10% off, and you'll enjoy it. You will be evangelical about your find if you haven't yet found them. So good stuff. CoachellaValleyCoffee.com.
CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. I'm Kim McAllister. JL Chauvin next.
Oh, yeah, baby.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Do yourself a favor. Welcome, first of all, if you're just joining us. We are a live 2-hour show, and we do it every day. Yeah, Monday through Friday, 2 to 4 in the East, 11 to 1 in the West. But do yourself a favor and check out this guy. I think he's kind of been found, you know what I mean? I feel like the hidden treasure that once was JL Chauvin, it's not hidden anymore. Everybody's on board. But you do get a few treasures in the work of JL Chauvin. I'll mention a couple of them as we begin to talk to him. But he, I think, really made his name with a Trump impression and podcast that continues. And he's got all the tics and manner, breathing that Trump has. And then he just matches it with this improv content that's brilliant. How about it for JL Chauvin, everybody?
Oh, wow. Thank you. Kind words as always.
You're so funny. I was watching your inauguration is my favorite N-word. Is that what it's called? I think
that
so.
is what it's that is what it's called. Although I could really screw up your fans by going, "What N-word? What are you, a racist?"
It's really great. It says if Trump were a stand-up, you were really loyal to that premise, and it's really funny.
Oh, well, thank you. And
yeah.
I got to say, I was surprised. I just heard you mention that you're vegan. And I was surprised because Joe Rogan told me you can only get a voice that deep if you eat raw beef for breakfast. So that's impressive. You're bucking the manosphere wisdom.
There is a bizarro, like maybe it's not so bizarro, connection that they try to establish. I mean, that the media does, and that the culture might be a best way to put it. The culture establishes between meat eating and masculinity.
Yes.
You know? And I was actually involved as a producer on a movie called The Game Changers. And the Game Changers documentary was designed to speak to guys about the myth of the meat eating and masculinity and how the media.
Novak Djokovic was like the cover guy, and you'd think you lucked out even better because he ended up being like an anti-vax guy. So you're getting 2 for 1 in terms of proving his masculinity.
Here's the wild thing about, you know, how that thing works. Like, I was really early as a producer on that film, like one of the first involved. And then what they do, and you become a producer because of money, you know, like you believe in a project, and you know this, JL, but just to kind of explain it as we're off on this tangent, but it's worth just running it out because they then bring in other people, right, with money or a name that will, you know, so that's how Djokovic gets involved. That's how Lewis Hamilton got involved, right? Can you get these, he's a big F1 driver, brings a lot of, and so Schwarzenegger was part of it, and all of these big, you know, names, and of course, James Cameron was the biggest one. And that's when I knew, when James Cameron came on board about 18 months after me, I knew we had a viable project. But anyway, what you're saying is true, because I thought Djokovic, oh, this is great. Djokovic is on. We're going to get all kinds of visibility. And then Djokovic goes to this anti-vax thing. And I thought, oh, Christ, man, we've got I can't believe this guy who I was lauding is going to, you know, but the movie did really well.
Complicated people, though, right?
Yeah,
so if you can get some people to give up meat and they die from COVID, it's sort of it's a win. It's a net win for living creatures.
Yeah,
you saved 2 cows, one anti-vax guy dies. You're like, that's a +1 for living beings.
Oh, yeah. Well, I never even thought of doing the arithmetic that way. That's really great.
And I realized a white shirt with a white wall backdrop. It looks like this is like my memorial photo, like at my funeral service. I'm just a glowing head, like a foggy head in a white background.
Did you ever do any other impressions before Trump in your act? Or I mean,
oh sure. When my comedy career started, I was like 50% impressions. You know,
I see.
Just like George Carlin was a big impersonator when he started, I said, let me follow his blueprint minus all the success. And so I started as an impersonator because it was easy. I could do voices, and it saves you from having to do material, really. Like you set up a scenario, and as long as there aren't too many comedy snobs in the audience, they'll go along with you. I remember, though, like 5 years into my career, I watched a set of mine from the DC Improv where I'd won a contest. And my entire set was basically impressions. Arnold Schwarzenegger, Owen Wilson, Jean-Claude Van Damme in scenarios. Like I built scenarios for them.
Sure.
And I was so uncomfortable watching this set because to me, it was like, it was the absolute worst. And yet I was killing. And I ended up having contempt for the audience that laughed at me many years ago as well. I go, you should have been discouraging this nonsense. Not
because you think it's too hacky to have a scenario?
Yeah, well, because it's, I used to close with like an Obama impression because I set it up in a certain way that I was comfortable with. And the Trump stuff is kind of what I'm known for, but I also do it in a very unique way. But when you're new at comedy, you don't even have your comedy skills, really. You're still in like a 101, 201 level, course level in terms of your skill set. So you're just going, wouldn't it be crazy? And if you ever see a comic and they say, wouldn't it be crazy? And they're unironically introducing a scenario to force feed you impersonations, leave and demand a refund immediately. So it was a lot of that. It was like, I was doing Joseph, Jesus's stepfather, played by Owen Wilson, because I felt like he had the appropriate meek energy to be competing with God in the bedroom. Like, well, she's like, Mary was with God. Like, that's like, he's huge. Like, and my friends will still quote that to me today, like ones who saw me early on. Not ironically, they still liked it, but I'm sorry to go off on a tangent, but I did impersonations very early in my stand-up. Like, it was a big part of it. And then I finished second in a comedy contest in New York City. And the guy who ran the contest, I had a very good set, good reaction from the crowd. And I said, what happened? They said, well, you were doing impressions and everybody loved them, but like the other comic was really kind of doing more pure stand-up. And so I said, lesson learned. And I just shelved my impersonations on stage for the next like 12 years.
Wow.
I dust the impersonations off during the pandemic, and fame and riches come my way. So thanks, Guy, for killing my vibe 14 years ago. Instead, I decided to toil for a decade and a half when I had the keys to the kingdom the whole time. But I kept doing them on YouTube. I sort of bifurcated my work so that like I did sketches where I could showcase the impressions in a more organic setting and pontificated from the stage as me.
Well, it's really, it's fun to talk about with comedians, and I think many of us know a bunch of comics high profile and those who are, sort of mid-level or whatever. And there is a strategy, and, and it's funny that you hold yourself, it seems you, JL, hold yourself to kind of a standard, like you don't want to do anything too hacky, and you feel like if a premise isn't, this is what I'm getting, that if a premise isn't like really something that you feel has some substance. You don't want to just use it as a platform to whatever. I mean, where many would say, hey, if you're getting the laughs, that really is the litmus test for whether something's working or not.
Right. And I think I'm actually writing something, just a blog, not a book, don't worry, but for next week about how I think we've hit this point artistically in the world, and especially in this country, and especially with comedy, like most of all, where I feel like art is dying. And I don't want to sound too alarmist, but I feel like art is transitioning, if that's still allowed under Trump, into content. And we are feeding algorithms and feeding machines to stay relevant, but nobody, like, I have an internal standard that I want to meet because I respect comedy. I love comedy. I was a huge comedy fan. And one of the benefits of, if I was a comedian in 1952, hey, it'd be a blank slate. I could create, the entire industry. So there's a disadvantage having to keep trying to find originality in your own take and your own story, but you're also building on decades of being able to witness good art and good, so it's a double-edged sword. You can learn from great art, but then it's harder almost to carve out your own unique space. But what I see with comedy, and I think it's going to infiltrate a lot of art, unfortunately, is this catering to algorithms where art is not the ends unto itself. I want to make a living as a comedian because that will allow me to do more comedy and to focus more of my energy on comedy. But I see a lot of people, especially newbies, getting into it. They just kind of want to have the accoutrement of a successful comedy career without the hardcore art of it. You know what I mean? And that's I would rather, if I had to choose, to be broke and a really good comic or a complete hack and financially successful, I would choose broke.
Yeah, that's what I get from you. It's really wild. Yeah.
Fortunately, I don't have to. But I think there are a lot of people who, I mean, I have a joke where I say people in different industries are like, oh, AI is going to replace screenwriters. AI is going to do the visual effects. They won't need extras. And I look at stand-up comedy and I go, oh, we won't need AI because there are a lot of comics who are just like, oh, I'll do it for you. I'll just do the algorithm. Forget art. Is the algorithm want me to do this? I'll do that. And then I will get the followers and the views. And that's the ends that I'm chasing, instead of I've created something new and interesting and fun. And so.
Well, sifting through comedic material of one sort or another, sitting at a club, watching a bunch of different comics, and then grabbing what you think works and using it in your act has always been something, that comics have accused other comics of doing. You know what I mean? Like, you come up with something and you have a great line in your act. Like, you have some throwaway lines in your in the inauguration is my favorite N-word thing, and I think they're really funny. And but probably only you could get away with. It's in a moment that you throw them away, and they kind of work really well. But there are a lot of things, even premises that are stolen within that world. I mean,
yeah. And I think that's why there's safety in maybe going from your own personal story.
Sure.
And that's the difficulty. Like, I've kind of become a hybrid of, like, I do impressions. I am a kind of classic observational, angry stand-up comedian. And I've also branched down to sort of more social takes as sort of some political commentary is infiltrated a little bit into my act. And so you just hope that you're sharp enough and quick enough and have put your own spin on certain things. Like, nobody's going to come at me with, my dad's Haitian and my mom's Irish, and they hated each other too and stayed together for 40 plus years. It's like, that's easy to be individualized, but like your political takes, you hope that your spin on it is at least relatively unique. Yeah, I'll delete jokes sometimes on social media when I've seen, like, I don't cheat, I don't copy, I don't steal from anybody. But if I see that somebody did it like 12 hours earlier, I'm just like, delete. Whereas the TikTok method, which is the defining entertainment app of our society now, the model is copy. The model is that got them followers. I'll just literally do that and I will get followers too. And I'm like, what is the end here? Like, what is the point? Like, just getting followers? Like, that's a weird thing to be creating things and that's your end goal. But
yeah, you lose yourself in audience capture, sort of. This is from B.A. Ware. Question for JL. have you had to tone down your routine since social movements like Me Too and BLM?
Yeah, I've had to definitely limit the N words and C words in my act by a lot.
Yeah, I think go ahead.
Well, I have had my thing with comedy, which is sort of interesting, is that I run into this problem where left-wing people, not all, and this is, by the way, of course, this is a generalization. This isn't saying everyone, but left-wing people sometimes can find my stand-up a little off-putting because they think, oh, he's righteous against like MAGA, so therefore his comedy will be a family-friendly, life-affirming affair. And then on the other side, I've had MAGA people say to me, wow, you're not one of these woke comics. I was surprised, just because I think having like dumb Hitler run the country is a bad thing. They can portray my now because I think that obviously I'm not a good comedian. And so you run into these issues where I think I'm a very mainstream comedian in terms of my tone, my takes. Like, I don't think I'm not an edgelord. I am not a panderer. But no, I've had really very little problem. The left can, some of my left-wing fans can annoy me a little bit, but I've done nothing differently in my act.
Yeah, you're very funny. I don't know.
I did get banned from some clubs though for right-wing people complained. I knew the area and I had done a series of clubs and had no problem, but apparently I walked a table of people who were very vocal about their disgust because I did 5 minutes on Trump out of like a 50-minute set, and
that was too much for them. Yeah.
Right. And once again, it's one of those things where if it were reversed and I were a right-wing quote unquote comic whose, dream was to be on Gutfeld every night, I would have a community ready to join Patreon, uplift me, get me an agent, because I was now a victim of woke cancel culture. But when the right-wing people complain, they get to go, we don't want politics in our comedy. And then some clubs will accept that as like, yeah, that's why we steer clear of politics. And I'm like, well, then maybe you should have everybody should have read my bio that said got famous for mocking MAGA. That's caveat emptor. What happened to that?
Right. You'd think booking the club, you would at least be aware of that.
Especially when I've worked the club 10 times.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. Well, I mean, again, it's a little like the letters that used to come in when people wrote letters. You'd only get a couple of letters into a television network, and they would literally change policy on what you can say because they felt, well, it represents a body of opinion on the, blah, blah, blah. I wanted to, before I lose you, I wanted to just mention, in addition to the comedy, so I didn't, I don't like to crank JL up and go, hey, do this, do that. So find him on YouTube, find him across and we have Albert, you saw the dates there. You'll put up the dates to see JL and the cities in which you can see JL. That's up on, it's in the
There's only
private
a few
chat
right now, but that Toronto show is huge. Tickets should be up like tonight or tomorrow, I think.
Well, the Toronto thing, I'm really curious about, because JL is going to play Toronto. It's
fully
April 9th.
Trump.
Yeah. Oh, fully as Trump. Okay.
Like
so
I may do an opening set as myself, like just to kick off the show, have a middle act, and then it's going to be like a speech, debate, Q&A, town hall, press conference
terrific,
with
man.
me as Trump. So like, if I wasn't going to get attacked justifiably, I would walk around Toronto that entire day dressed as Trump, saying, "Come down to yuck yucks if you can handle it."
I hope somebody is rolling on that.
Oh, yeah.
Somebody's rolling record on that. That is just great. Trump in Canada. And JL is just a great improv muscle that you're seeing flexed in all these different ways. It's really fun. So
I thought I was like Jeffrey Tubing for a second.
Not that muscle.
Okay.
I've never seen it. I can proudly say. But what I did want to mention also, that you coexist with some like really interesting takes that you'll just drop because you have a background as an attorney and you're really a obviously well-read guy. And I've watched a lot of what you said. So you had a drop, and I wanted you to share this with the audience, as I say, on the last minute or so.
Sure.
You had a take on MAGA, the 5 stages of MAGA, I think it was. Can you just quickly share it with this audience?
Yes, if I can remember them. It was, I think it was like, oh God.
I'm sorry. I thought you'd know it, but
no, I should know it.
I just saw it. Yeah.
Yeah. It's basically just a 5-step program from like, you start with ignorance and then you get jealous of some other group. And then I'm forgetting what it was, but basically you find a guy like Trump that inspires you. And then you take vengeance on that group through voting and through laws. And then when you're completely wasted from all that, you hopefully have some sort of oh shit moment, if I can say that.
Right. That's the end. But there's a nuance moment before that. Do you remember you talked about a nuance stage?
Yes, thank you.
Because that's what we're about on. So you're drunk with success. Revenge against your enemies. We're riding, we're storming the castle, and then you hit this nuance stage. Just telling you, that's where we are now. I think we're close to it.
The market's tanking? You mean I can't respond the way I did every time something bad happened with Joe Biden, like the world was on fire? Oh no, with Trump, this is a market correction. I don't know what that means, but I'm told by Fox News that this isn't a big deal. Although if Joe Biden lost 50 points in the market, we would ask for his head. But 10,000 points, just a correction, or 10%, don't you worry. It's just Trump being Trump. And it's like, you get into all these things like now the free speech, where are the free speech libertarians who with like Colombia, not to get into a divisive issue on Israel, but like with the guy being held in Louisiana for protected speech, you don't have to like the speech. Where are the libertarians? Where are these? We're not MAGA. We're not conservative. We truly believe in the freedoms. You know what I mean? Things like that. So the nuance phase is great because they will probably live in that forever.
Right. Because I don't think you're going to get the oh shit thing, which is the last stage. I don't know that you're going to get it out of a lot of them, but I think the nuance thing where all these cross currents and they're going, oh my God, this is, but they don't want to admit it. Because I think MAGA lives on. I mean, I think MAGA's, the chance, if there is one, to retake this Democratic Republic is around the edges, to get people out of their chairs and out to the ballot box, assuming there is a ballot box, in the.
I think that's why I said in that video that you're referencing, I think I said the goal is to get 10% of those people to have an oh shit moment, not 90%. Like if 10% just go, I made a mistake or it didn't turn out how I wanted, that's facing reality. That's where we are. If you can get 10% of MAGA to face reality, you've won.
Albert, do you have all his dates up? Can you put up the Henderson date? Henderson, Nevada, March 28th through 30th.
Try not to bombard them with all my 2 dates.
As part of the stand-up pod jam. Info's on his website, which is jlchauvin.com. Again, jlchauvin.com, CAUVIN, for people who are just listening and not watching. And that's in Henderson, Nevada. That's coming up 28th through 30th. But I'm telling you, if you can get to that Toronto date, that is, I mean, I would almost, if you were anywhere in the West, I'd fly to see that, but it's just a little too far for me. But
well,
Toronto.
Hopefully it goes well. Like I want it to go well because that's like the big chain in Canada also, and they have a Vancouver club.
Oh, so there you go.
It'd be nice if this could go, like it's really on me to just drum up as much interest and hopefully the club can hype it up. But I really think it's a great moment to laugh at Trump. I don't feel like maybe I'll be the new instead of Hanoi Jane, they'll call me Toronto JL. They're like, he went to a foreign country and mocked our leader and they all enjoyed it. That's exactly what I want.
Toronto Yuck Yucks, April 9th. Tickets are coming soon. Anybody in that area, we do have listeners and viewers in that area, so hopefully they'll come out and check it out. So really cool. We'll see you soon. Big fan. Continue to be a big fan. And
thank you so much, Mark. I think I may even see you soon, literally.
Oh yeah, that's right. We're going to see you in Las Vegas. It's our big Las Vegas weekend with JL Chauvin. I love it.
I'll be at the Wheel of Fortune machines like all the high rollers.
All right, my friend. Talk soon. Thanks you
so much.
All right. Good luck. JL Chauvin, everybody. Love it.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Oh, I'm such a fan of his stuff. Great takes, and he does just a great kind of Trump improv thing on stage. It's terrific. Go to that Toronto show if you can. Albert, Kim, everyone, It's been a productive first day of Mark's Madness. Should I review anything, Commish, or do people really know where they can vote? And
there's been pretty good voter turnout already, so people are finding the vote. If you can't find it, check our YouTube channel under posts. Remember, Mark Thompson Show under posts.
Yeah. So again, we had in the first hour, we had that, wasn't it? Shame. Yeah. That was going up against.
So just a yes or no, you still do not have a plan.
I have concepts of a plan.
Those two went up against each other, right?
It was really good head-to-head, I have to say.
Yeah, it's strong.
Yeah.
Albert's put together a very, very tough first round. And so this hour, we introduce these two, which are the ones.
Hey, Mark, it's George Santos here.
And that goes up against.
You do not know what you are talking about.
So those two are the second hour, but all four exist in the posts section of our YouTube channel. All you have to do is go there and you can vote for the one that you feel should continue to the next round. We must wrap up. Quickly, I just want a quick shout out to Candace. Candace with a super sticker for $20. Thank you, Candace.
Big shout out
to you. Thank you. Michael D. says, a new Irish blessing. May your rights be protected and your resolve remain strong as you join the resistance and fight all that is wrong. Wow. Well done. Good people of the Mark Thompson Show, says Richard Delamater, I want you to know that I stand with Mark fully on his stance about animal rights. So that's nice. I don't get a lot of that here. I don't really hit the animal rights thing too hard here. But once in a while, it seems appropriate. But I really appreciate that. Wow, thank you, Richard. Yeah, appreciate that very much. Noe says, I love my autism. Thank you, vaccines. Noe Marie is, she's a force of nature. I mean, if that's autism, man, wow. And this from Cousin Erie, when exiting a ride car, always look at the seat to make sure your phone or anything isn't on it. That's brought to you by Cousin Erie, everyone. There you go. That's the
big shout
out to Cousin Erie, and thank you for the $5 super chat. Carlin is my favorite, says Spencer, indeed. Props to the Dropkick Murphys. He's turned on his friends. He's turned on America's friends and our allies. He's a rat and a coward, said Ken Casey. Wow. Didn't see that quote.
I can't believe Trump called Canada nasty. He called Canadians nasty.
Yeah, the most polite nation in the world, perhaps.
Really?
Yeah.
Come on.
What happened to Belinda? She's dealing with I think a health situation with her parents. So that's what's happening there. So thank you, Viewfinders President, for asking. We love Ken Casey here in Mass. There it is. A shout out to the Ken Casey quote. Good stuff. Misdemeanor. Thank you. Well, Kim,
yes.
Without any further delay, I think we must wrap up. Yeah. I know. Tomorrow, I have my pre-surgery show. You know, got to have surgery on my hand.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a big deal, but, you know, I move a lot of buttons and a lot of sliders and stuff like that, and I'm worried that I may be compromised. So I've kind of I've sort of turned the show over to Kim.
Yeah. But I mean, you never know. You could come home from surgery feeling like $1 million.
Oh, I don't think so. They put like a big boxing glove type thing on your hand, so I could have a little trouble. But if I can do the show, I certainly will, and I will. Albert, I'll probably record some stuff for tomorrow's Mark's Madness, rather for Friday's Mark's Madness, so Kim doesn't have to deal with it. But anyway, Kim has the After Party Live next. Thanks, everybody, for all your support today. Good show. And tomorrow, I might add, we have Shadow.
I'm Shadow Stevens for the Mark Thompson Show. Bye-bye.
Tomorrow, we have the great David Katz and more. Out of time. Thank you, everybody. Until tomorrow. Bye-bye.